Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Made by Marymount, the official Marymount Athletics podcast. Unfortunately, today is my last day as the official host of the Marymount Athletics podcast. And thankfully, Jacob gives me the opportunity to talk about what this podcast has done for me the last 2 years. So today, I will talk about why I wanted to start Made by Marymount, some of my favorite episodes, and a couple of thank yous to end my era as the official Made by Marymount host. With that, let's see what I chat about.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Made by Marymount. Today is a sad day. It is the end of an era, the end of the Ella DeNicola Made by Marymount era, which in fairness is actually the discovery era of this podcast. So today, my very special guest is none other than Ella DeNicola. How are you feeling today, Ella?
It's crazy to think that 2 years ago we kind of started this whole thing, and now it's just, we're nearing the end. I mean, with graduation next week, it kind of is no better time to kind of say goodbye to it all. But yeah, it's really bittersweet. I'm excited for the future, but really sad to let go of something that's done so much for me the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for 2 years now between Tommy and myself as your producer, even some other special guests running the cameras or the computers and everything like that. So yeah, it is weird. It's weird for me as a full-time member of the staff and being a part of this journey with you. So, but today is going to kind of be a reflection time for you and talk about kind of some of your favorite memories, talk about what you've learned, all of that good fun jazz. But today is really about celebrating you and the work that you've done over the past 2 years, like you said. And I lost count of the episodes, but you've done a tremendous job with it all. So the first question is a pretty basic one, but it's kind of simple, but I think it's going to speak a lot to the reasoning of why you continue to do this. But why did you ultimately want to do this at the beginning of when you kind of came to Tommy and myself 2 years ago and was like, I would like to do this podcast? What was the reasoning behind that for you?
I think, Jacob, I think you know this better than anyone else too about me, is that athletic and communications is something that I'm really passionate about. And post grad, I've always wanted to go into the interview side of athletics as well, kind of like that sideline reporter, clubhouse reporter for athletics. So I kind of was like, how can I do that to set myself up for success and, benefit and, make something good for the greater good of Marymount athletics. And that's kind of where I thought about this. And it also, I took it from an athletic perspective where I kind of looked at myself who was an athlete who was competitive in my sport, but it gave athletes a chance, which we've always said this, I've said it in every intro, but it gave them a chance to tell their story in their own words, which is really big. I think that athletes are more than just their stats or, what their athletic bio says. You're more than that as an athlete because, and we'll touch on this later, but I learned so much about every single athlete here at Marymount that's been on this podcast. There's more to them than just how many points they scored, how fast their times are, what records they've broken. There's something more to that. And I think that that's really important to celebrate too, because that's what makes them a student athlete and that's what makes them like a unique individual. So that was a big thing I wanted to do with this podcast, was to give athletes like that spotlight to kind of brag on themselves a little bit, because I think as individuals, we stray away from that and we want to be humble, but there is a time and there is a place to be proud of what you've accomplished in your life. And so I kind of wanted to give athletes that time and, that space.
Yeah. And one of the things that I always say when people ask me what I do for a living is I try to tell the stories of student athletes within the institution that I work at, which is Marymount University, over the past 3 years. And the coolest thing about Marymount is the fact that I have people like you that are interested in this kind of stuff and want to further push that forward. I only have so many hours in the day, but when I have people like yourselves that are interested and invested in doing things along those lines and broadening the horizon of how we understand what a student athlete is, and even people that work within athletics, because you not only have interviewed student athletes, but you've also interviewed administrators, coaches, new coaches, standing coaches, the whole nine, all while doing all that, also being a leader on SAC and everything. So you were in the weeds throughout. And I want to kind of ask a question about that. Do you think the fact that you were the vice president of SAC, you were a student athlete, you worked in athletics communication, I mean, you were at a million of our events. Do you think that that helped you along the way kind of understand what telling a story about a student athlete really is about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, before I kind of got to Marymount and I got kind of settled in, it was just you show up, you perform at your meet, your game, your match, whatever it may be. They write your highlights and then that's it. But learning, especially going into SAC, like you learn a little bit more about each personality of every single student athlete. And you're like, wait, that's really interesting. I never would have known that about you. I thought you were just a really good soccer player. I thought you were just a really good basketball player, whatever it may be. And then, kind of working within communications, like you learned a lot about me outside of just being a swimmer. So I think that kind of gave me like the perspective of, yeah, there's more to a person than just being an athlete. Because I mean, like, it's nothing I really thought about before. Like I was like, I wake up, I swim, my like times are there. That's all there is to me as like a swimmer. But there is more than that. And I've done a lot more like with swimming than just being in the actual pool. So yeah, being involved as I was within athletics, I think really showed me like how much of a story there is behind athletics. Because, like, okay, here's a good example. We talk about women's lacrosse who just won their first program history championship. That's huge. But like to somebody that doesn't know the depth of what that meant to those girls, it's just a championship, which is still great. But when you think about what you know about that team, like, how special that was and how big of a deal that was to those girls in CK. So I think that's a really good example of like putting it into perspective of what it means to like tell a story within like ACOM essentially.
Yeah. No, I mean, you hit it on the head. And women's lacrosse is a great example. It's very fresh in our heads right now, obviously, but I think when you understand how Division III athletics programs operate across the board, that we are small college athletics and that we take pride in community service, academics, the whole picture of what the NCAA discover, develop, the whole nine, what we seek out to within athletics. And that's part of the reason that I like working in small college athletics specifically. Fun fact about me, I have no interest in going to a large school and working in what I do, because I care about the experience of small college athletics, specifically people like yourselves. During your 4 years, you have been able to compete, win championships in the pool, be a SAC vice president. You've been able to be on the sidelines at events, working, getting paid to do and help me achieve my goals. And at the end of the day, you're just growing as an individual. And not to say that Division I is, completely different than that fact, but it's just, I understand that experience firsthand because I was a Division III student athlete myself. I'm pretty sure I said that on the last time we talked, but nonetheless, it's good to remind people that I was in you guys' shoes at one point in time. And that's why I care so much about it. But moving on a little bit, do we know the number of how many episodes? Do you know it off the top of your head? What is this, like 48 or 49 or something like that?
We're very close to 50. Unfortunately, I did not get the 50. That was a big goal of mine. But life happens. Life gets busy. So I didn't reach 50, but that's okay. It's still a win. I still enjoyed every single episode. I do think we're near like 45. We're like almost there. So it's got to be like in the higher mid 40s, I think.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, but nonetheless, so across all these episodes, and so I remember specifically your first episode, which was with incoming women's volleyball coach Shane Spellman, shout out, and tell me a little bit about that first episode. What were you feeling heading into that first episode?
Oh my God. Okay, thinking about that, I mean, we were not here. We were upstairs in what is/was the conference room upstairs, and we were in higher chairs. The camera only had one camera set up. I think we still had the same mic set up. That was still the same. And I remember I did so much prep. I remember I went and I sat in Shane's office and I was like, I gave him like a list of things, like a list of like pre-interview questions. And I did that probably like a week before we actually like started the interview. And I remember sitting there profusely sweating. I was so nervous. I remember I was like shaking, holding the mic. So now I just like, I still prepare, but like it's so less intimidating. And I'm glad that I don't find it as intimidating anymore now, because now when like student athletes are nervous, I'm like, you're literally just talking to me.
Mhm.
Like it's just you and I.
Yeah.
Like, and then once we start talking, you realize that the camera's not there. But that first episode, and I remember like looking back on it and I was like, yo, this is sick.
Mhm.
Now I can't watch it. Sorry, Shade. Great episode. You did awesome. But I look back and I'm like, whew, there was a lot of growth that happened in 2 years
Yeah.
looking back at that one on all ends of the aspect. I mean, now we have like a 2 camera setup. Now we have this designated area where we record every single podcast
Mhm.
now. And like we kind of sit it where usually I'm in that seat and the guest is here. So we have like a direct kind of like ideal and setup now that we
Mhm.
have in comparison to what we once had. But I like, yeah, I can't really go back and watch that one anymore because I get like secondhand. Well, it's not secondhand embarrassment because it's me, but I get embarrassed. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was looking back on it, it's the whole operation has definitely grown. You have grown as an individual. So kind of on a technical aspect, what has been kind of the clicking point for you when it comes to interviewing people that got you to that comfort level, you think?
I think I will say this is no hate to any adult that I've interviewed, but talking to a student athlete is a lot easier. Um it's not as like intimidating because you're talking to like for me like I'm still a kid in a
Mhm.
sense. Like I mean, I'm 22 years old but I'm still a kid. These are people that are like, you know, superior to me. So it's that makes me like a little bit more nervous, but I do think now I have the confidence, you
Mhm.
know, that I kind of know what I'm capable of and I know what and I know that like I'm decent at this at least. And that
Mhm.
kind of has helped me. But also, like, a big thing in the interview process, and I've carried this into a lot of my classes too,
Mhm.
with having to do interviews. And you and I have talked about this, and I really didn't start hitting on this until middle of last year.
Mhm.
And it was really like listening to what the guests said and asking questions based on that. So a lot of the time I would go in to an interview or a podcast and I would have like a list of written out questions
Mhm.
and like things that I wanted to touch on. So I would ask my question, they would answer, I would go on to the next.
Mhm.
A lot of the time though, there is room for follow-up questions based on what that individual said. So
Yeah.
having to learn like maybe to not go in the direct script order that I had,
Mhm.
that was something that was really good. And then I've kind of learned that as I've like gotten older, as I've gotten more experienced. I don't I'm like it's 2 years, but
Yeah.
I think that's been like a really big thing that I've learned. But yeah, I mean, also just knowing like the confidence level, like I have done this for 2 years. Like I kind of know what I'm doing by now.
Mhm.
And knowing that like I know what I'm doing, these athletes like respect me and they're excited to be here too is another thing.
Mhm.
I used to think for a while I was like embarrassed and like I was like, I hope like athletes aren't like upset or like they don't want to do this. But
Mhm.
you know, as the podcast grew, like people came up to me and were like, yo, put me on the pod, put me on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pod. So like to have like, you know, the backup from like my fellow like student athletes, that also meant a lot to me. And
Mhm.
that helped like the confidence wise. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that helped me grow within 2 years. But I think like the backup from the student athletes and then to like learning like and growing on interviewing people in itself were like the two big things for me, I think.
Okay. No, it's good. And are there any other extra skill sets, experiences that you think will help you outside of strictly a setting like this, strictly an interview setting? Do you know what I mean? Like, does that confidence level also lean itself to making you want to or be able to kind of stick up for yourself? You're about to be a professional, and the professional world is a dog eat dog world sometimes. Are there any other extra skill sets or experiences that potentially will also help you in other avenues that aren't strictly a setting like this? You know what I mean?
I will say too, another thing that I did want to touch on is that this space was also like an outlet for me and like a
Mhm.
mental health aspect to where like if life outside of Sweet 23 was not going in the way that I wanted to, this was a 45 to
Mhm.
30-minute time where like I got to do something that I really loved and cared about.
Okay.
And I think like even going back and like watching these like 4 years down the road, like I think I'm going to remember that and it
Mhm.
kind of will be a step away to kind of like decompress and kind of remember like the happiness that I felt with that. So that was
Mhm.
a really big thing that this podcast also did for me. But yeah, I mean, now like my knowledge on like how to speak to people
Mhm.
is like really big because when you talk to somebody, you want to talk to somebody with respect, but also like authority. And when you're, when you're younger and you're going into the workplace, like I don't want to seem like weak and frail, but also like have to treat somebody with respect.
Yeah.
So I think this podcast has like taught me how to do that and like ask tough questions that like, I don't necessarily maybe want to ask, but they're the questions that need to be asked. There's been topics that have come up where unfortunately, like athletes and coaches have had to deal with really hard times in their life. And I have to ask them, like, how did that make you feel? Or like, what, this incident happened to you, this event happened to you. What did you take out of that event to become, who you are now? And so uncomfortable situations like that have kind of like prepped me in being ready for the workforce because it's not easy to ask somebody that kind of question. But now, like, I've asked that question before. I've been in that situation before. It's kind of like prepped me, and like I feel like more comfortable like asking tough questions, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, in any workforce, you're going to have difficult conversations, and but it's about being able to tackle that in a confident way where both parties are feeling the love, feeling involved and everything like that. So I think an outlet like this is important to kind of be able to do that. I mean, we've talked about mental health on this podcast, which is an incredibly important and significant aspect of being a student athlete right now. We are working to stop the stigma, and we talked about that in the episode with Cam Glass, right?
Yeah. Cam Glass was a big one for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so stuff like that are difficult topics that we need to shed light on a lot. And you did a great job with that episode. Cam did a great job with that episode. And it's just
shout out Cam. Great episode.
Yeah. No, Cam's the best. And that was one of my favorite episodes because that's something that, to be a little vulnerable, that I dealt with when I was a student athlete, not necessarily directly related to baseball, but it was, overall. And I think, so that's good. And that's important. And you'll be surprised at how much that's going to help you in the future. But to kind of go on a little bit more of a fun topic, I want you to rank your top 3 favorite episodes, going 3, 2, 1 right now. And again, this is no hate to any episode. I think every single one we've done are phenomenal, but I know that there are specific ones that even after we're done recording, you'll come and be like, oh, that's a good one.
I know you know my number 1. So, okay, number 3, we're going to start at number 3. This year, Leo Torres.
Okay.
That one was really cool because learned a lot about Leo, and that Leo being the superstar that he is, and then coming in to find out he was recruited for the position that he did not currently play at that time, and then to excel the way he did. That was really cool. And then to kind of relive that men's soccer championship with him, like that was so cool. Like to find out like what that moment meant to him, and like kind of like almost like experience it as Leo. The way that he described it was really cool. So that one's number 3. That my top 3 are like all one in my eyes.
Okay. That's fine too. That's 3.
Yeah. And then let me think. What should be my 2? This is like hard. I like had them, but now I'm like thinking about them again. I can't believe that I'm going to admit that this is my number 2.
Okay.
However, Quincy Vi might be my number 2.
Okay. That was like episode 3, right?
Yeah, that was like really early on. Quincy, don't get a big head if you're watching this. Quincy's was a lot of fun, wanting to work in baseball. So it was fun to talk ball with Quincy. And then, Quincy had his random that will forever live on. I know he got like some like chatter about this, like from his teammates, but his ham and cheese sandwich with pretzels and I don't know, something I can't remember now, but like his ham and cheese sandwich will forever live on in the Made by Marymount history books. So shout out Quincy for that one. Your random sandwich is something that will live for me forever. And then my number 1 is Chandler Edelton and Samantha Shackelford. That one will hold such a special place in my heart. That one, as a female athlete, meant so much to me. I remember at the end, I did a little segment on the 2 because for those of you that don't know, they're best friends. I quizzed them. I was like, how well do you know each other? And it was the cutest thing ever. Like it was so sweet. I remember I asked like coffee orders, and they knew it immediately. And Samantha made a comment that kind of lives with me like forever. She was like, Samantha Shackelford, one of the best women's basketball players, in my time here at Marymount. and we'll go down in the history books, but she made a comment that she's just a girl that likes coffee too. And that was the epitome of what I wanted this podcast to be.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people know Sam as a phenomenal basketball player, but in that moment, like, I learned that she loved pink and that she like loved coffee, and like I learned a lot about her. Chandler told me it, but nonetheless, like I learned a lot about her. And so that was a prime example of what I wanted this podcast to be, was to give athletes a time for them to learn more about them rather than just what points they have on the scoreboard or like how many rebounds they have. Like that was a great example of that. And then I also just love those two girls. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, I have an honorary mention.
Okay, go.
I have an honorary mention. Arela Garcia is also up there. I remember, I think women's lacrosse also made a video of a snippet of Arela talking from that video or that podcast. I've never heard somebody talk about their team with so much love. And I think that, looking at women's lacrosse, you're like, those girls love each other and they just have so much love for each other. But to watch that and to like hear Arela talk about it was so heartwarming. And it just like makes you like, that's sweet. Like, aw, like it just makes you happy. So that one is definitely an honorable mention for me, I think, just to like see like the good side of sports. A lot of the time, like we think about it just being like grind. But there is a sisterhood, there is a brotherhood, and Arela did a really good job at, portraying that on behalf of women's lacrosse too.
Yeah. I really like that episode too. I've known Arela and those girls a long time. I've known a lot of these athletes a long time. I'm coming on year 3 now, or the end of year 3 or whatever. I can't, time is a flat circle, but yeah, so those are good. We'll call them top 4. Yeah, we'll call them top 4. But
what are some of yours?
Oh, some of mine. Okay. Arela was definitely up there because I think as a student athlete or a former student athlete, I'm no longer a student athlete, but as a former student athlete, my best friends in the world are people that I met playing baseball in college. My best friend in the entire world was my throwing partner in college, and he's got a kid now and all this jazz. And so the fact that, that brotherhood, like you said, it was something that stood the test of time. I talk to him every day. Granted, it's like while we play MLB The Show, but nonetheless,
hey, whatever works.
Yeah, so that one was really good. Sam and Chandler were really great. Those two were just like kind of just like a super fun duo. But I think one of the more significant ones that you did that I was really proud of you for sitting down and doing it was last year's National Girls and Women's in Sports Day episode.
Yeah, hold on, because if they watch this and they're like, you didn't mention us, I loved that one. And I know Ellen O'Brien was like really nervous, didn't really want to do it, but she loves me, so she did it anyway. So shout out Ellen and Rachel for that one, because I feel like Rachel was like kind of hesitant too. But that one was so much fun to sit down with Jill, Ellen, and Rachel and to talk about the significance of females in sports, particularly in collegiate athletics, was huge. And that one was a lot of fun. I didn't forget about it, just so you guys know. But I did love that one. And, it kind of put me in a position where now I have a really good relationship with all 3 of those women. I go up to their office quite literally 3 times a week, probably. I'll stop by, I see Jacob, I set my bag down, and I go upstairs, and then I come back down. Like, that's not a lie. Like, I do that. Yeah. So, and I stop in, and, that'll be a relationship that I have with those 3 for the rest of my life, on professional level, but also on like a comfort level, that those ladies have supported me for 3 years. Yeah, 3 years, 4 years, but like 3 years in like a athletic communication worker aspect. Yeah. But and they've been like really big fans of me. Jill, especially, anytime Jill wants to talk about the significance of Marymount athletics, she shouts out "Made by Marymount," which is like enough to make a grown woman cry. Like literally every year at Sainsbury's, I'm like, that's so nice. So to have the support from them, and also interviewing Jimmy, also interviewing Ryan, was really big, because those are your faces of athletics. I mean, especially like you and Tommy, like the face of like ACOM, but like to interview admin and like people that have such a significant role was also like really special for them to like trust an athlete or a worker like me to sit down and like interview them. Yeah. Like to think that I'm like good enough for that was really special too. And to like, especially Ryan, to talk about the pathway program, something that was so special to him. Like he came down here And I had been waiting on that one. And so we kind of like had to wait till the best time for him to talk about the pathway program because he wanted to provide the most information that he could. So I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And so when he was finally ready, he was like, all right, let's do it. So to think that he was confident enough in me and trusted me enough to like kind of give him a space to tell him or to tell like people about his pathway program and his experience with that was like really special. So to have be trusted by admin too was something that was really special.
Well, I mean, I can speak for all admin that we want student athletes to have any sort of platform they want. Not everybody wants to be a podcaster or an interviewer or be a sideline reporter, but they have their own specific platforms, and we all encourage that on a daily basis. And I think it shows with the good that Marymount Athletics does across the board in the community, in the classroom, and also just on the competition site. But yeah, so those are my few favorites. I was just really proud of that one because I thought it was really cool to get those three women inside the room with you and have, you know, a student athlete and three athletics administrators that were all women and that are all powerful and that all do phenomenal work. So
was that our only 3-person one?
Yeah.
I was about to say, like, we had to do some wiggling around to like make that one work too, like equipment wise, and we made it work. So that one was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. And I had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun producing these, you know. We upgraded it a little bit. We did all that jazz. So it's been a lot of fun. And Tommy was kind of the main producer at first. And then I just one day I was like, you know, I'll just take that off your plate, buddy. Let me do that a little bit as well and just kind of get that rolling. So but really, I mean, we're kind of trailing off a little bit here, but I just want to express that it's been incredibly fulfilling in my role as someone that's known you for 3 years, that to see you kind of do this and get better ultimately. And you weren't bad at first, don't get me wrong, but
that might be a hot take.
but you've definitely grown as an interviewer, and you know, it's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed it. And I think the most impressive thing is you were never shying away from the fact that you needed to be equitable and talk to everybody. You're a swimmer, you love baseball, but you wanted to get women's soccer on. You wanted to get men's soccer on. You wanted to get all these different sports on that you may have not known anything about, but then you took the time to research and kind of figure things out, get to know them on a sheet of paper, and then you took this time to get to know them even more. But at this point, I really just kind of want to give you one more platform to say whatever you want to say, and your final sign off, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 years with Made by Marymount have been so fun. I think, you know, with every episode up to 45, wherever we're at now, every single guest I have a relationship now with, whether it be I'm really close to an administrator, I see this coach in passing and I say hello and they ask me how things are going, or if it's a student athlete that now I have a running joke with, or I see all the time and, you know, they're now one of my really close friends. I'm going to shout out one specific student athlete. I'm going to shout out Sam Struggs because I think Sam last year was one of the first individuals that I had never really talked to before and asked him to be on the podcast. And now Sam and I are like really like good friends. And, you know, I work with him with Jacob. So like, Sam, shout out to you because you kind of like put me in a position where I had to do something that I was kind of nervous about. So, but yeah, I mean, this has been so fun. I've learned so much about teams. I've learned so much about like athletes and different hobbies that people have. And I am really sad to let it go. It's been something that has been, like I said, an outlet for me for 2 years where I've had a lot of fun with it, you know, and it's grown so much. I mean, we joke around and we talk about the first episode, and to think now, like, that's what I'm kind of known for. I know when somebody has been like, oh, yeah, like Ella, they're like, wait, isn't that the girl at the podcast? I'm like, yeah, like that, you know, that's her. So to think that that's like tied to my name now for a really long time is really special. Kind of my last thoughts is I want to thank Tommy and Jacob. You know, you literally trusted me. You said, okay, here you go. And, you know, we've had so much fun with it. You know, I had them on and got to have like 2 of my favorite people at Marymount on the podcast, which was a lot of fun. I want to thank my mom and my dad. They have sat at my house and watched every single episode every Thursday on every day that it releases. And they've sat there and they've watched enough to have a conversation with me after the fact about it. Um, my parents are my number one fans in every single thing that I do. So to sit there and listen to every single podcast every single week is crazy. They're probably the only people to have done that. So thanks, mom and dad. I want to thank all of the administrators, Jill, Ellen, Ryan, Jimmy, Rachel, you're in that too. You know, Jacob and Tommy, you guys are still in that, but you guys trusted me to have a platform for Marymount where people would see this. This is on YouTube, it's on Spotify. Like people can just see this and look it up if they wanted to. And you guys trusted me enough to have this platform and, you know, to have a essentially a face for Marymount. So that was really special. And, you know, I am forever in debt for that. My last thank you is to every single guest that I had. Like I said earlier, you guys trusted me and were willing to come on here and chat with me for whether it be some of my episodes were 45 minutes and some of them were just 20. I mean, and no matter how long you chatted with me, it was really special. And I remember something from every single episode, all the way from Shane Spellman, all the way to my most recent one with Corinne. Like I remember all of them. And so I am, you know, heavily in debt to you guys because you guys gave me a space to have fun and, you know, pursue something that I was really passionate about. Yeah, for the future of this podcast, I'm really excited to see, you know, what happens with it. It has a really big future and I'm very excited and I will always be made by Marymount's number one fan. Thank you.
Bang. All done. Sad face. Wave.